see you guys in the dark.
I walked into the room for the first time, freshman year. Saw him standing in the middle of the room, screaming at his dad. He was yelling about not wanting to go, how he blamed his mother for writing his college essay and filling out the application. He kept calling my roommate, Eduardo, an ungrateful piece of shit, and threatening to beat the shit out of him if he tried to leave. It was right after he finished speaking that they realized that I was in the room. They both pretended nothing had happened, shook my hand, and introduced themselves. Luckily, my parents had not walked in with me, so they didn't have to see that and be worried about it. Eventually, my parents met his, as they had helped me set up my room, and talked about how proud of us they were. Eduardo's dad kept saying things like, "It's either college or the street, because I'm not paying to support a failure." My parents, of course, thought that he was joking. Every day, this kid told me how he hated school. He would never go to class. He'd drink in the room all day with the door wide open, scream at everyone, party all night, and generally just be a dick. He used to watch VH1 every night until 4 o'clock in the morning, with the volume cranked up so loud that you couldn't hear. When I asked him to turn it down because I couldn't hear, he said that he would if I wrestled him. Turns out he was serious. He wanted to wrestle me, because of me asking him to turn down that Bret Michaels Rock of Love show. I declined, and then went to bed. The next day, he called his mom to come get him, and she agreed. Said that she was getting in the car. She had never came. He had lost his shit. He broke everything that he owned, punched a hole through his TV, slammed his Guitar Hero controls on the ground repeatedly, threw his Xbox out of the window, cracked his cell phone in half, ripped his bed sheets. He basically totaled his side of the room. I left the room during all of this, assuming that he was just blowing off some steam, and not knowing he was breaking his shit. I walked back into the war zone, with him standing in the middle of the room crying, drinking laundry detergent, yelling about how he just wanted to die, how he took a whole bottle of Advil after he broke his stuff. I ran to go get the RA, and he ran and took the broken glass, plastic shards from his computer monitor, then started cutting his wrist. The RA and I re-entered the room to this kid throwing up detergent and bleeding. Cops were called. They fed him charcoal to prevent him from dying due to the detergent and pills. Apparently they do this instead of the syrup. He left that night, woke me up to say goodbye. The last thing he said to me, "Goodbye. I'm sorry about ruining your birthday." After he left, I had needed a new roommate. The guys across the hall were tripled in a room made for two, so I invited one of them to live with me. He had accepted. The RD agreed, and less than 2 weeks later, he was all moved in. This new guy is great. We really hit it off, and became fast friends. He would tell me how Eduardo still texts him. Apparently he still texted everyone in the rooms near mine. Now I really don't care, because who am I to say who they should and shouldn't talk to, as long as it doesn't involve me? My new roommate, I'll call him Bill, is a pretty sociable person, and has long since made friends with all of the neighbors. I always wanted to make friends with the people around us, but having Eduardo as a roommate made it incredibly difficult to. His train of thought was that if they were his friends, they could not under any circumstances be my friends as well. Honestly, looking back on it, I guess I was a bit like an abused girlfriend or a wife. I'd gotten so used to him being a dick that I just quietly sat in my room, playing video games, afraid to be sociable for fear of awakening the beast. Anyways, Bill introduced me to the neighbors, and we all became good friends. It was once this friendship blossomed that they began to admit to me that not only was Eduardo still texting them, he was becoming more and more angry towards me. He would text them how things would be better if I had just left and not him, and how he'd made some mistakes and wished that he would just come back. It was at this point that he texted Bill, told him, "Hey man, I'm going to come visit for the weekend. I'm taking my old bed while I'm there." It was at this point that I actually nutted up and decided enough was enough. I called him myself. Still had his number saved in my phone for God knows whatever reason, and flat out told him that he was unwelcomed in my room. I said that he was welcome to come get his stuff that he had left, that had survived his episode. His mini fridge was all that had remained, but there was no way that I was letting him stay in the room for longer than it took to take his fridge, because of the fact that he was a downright horrible person. He flipped out on me. He started screaming into the phone how I was the greasiest piece of shit slime ball that he'd ever called a friend. I said sorry, goodbye, and then hung up. He tried calling back, texting, and IMing me, but I had ignored or blocked it all. It was at this point that he started commenting on everything that I've ever done on Facebook. Ever. I mean ever. All with the same word. He had called me the F word. Hundreds of notifications. Finally he stopped, and I thought that it was over. Then suddenly Bill gets a text that says, "Dude, fuck him. He won't say no after this." Bill asks him what he means, and Eduardo responds with, "Got my dad's gun case keys. See you in an hour." I've never run anywhere faster than I have to the police station that day. I explained the situation. They called a cop from his area to speak with him and his parents. They assured me nothing was going to happen, and that he probably was just pissed and needed to blow off some steam. Turns out the cops got to his house as he was getting in the car. He had his dad's shotgun under the passenger seat. I called my family. They drove out. We had a meeting with the police. Eduardo's mother drove out to the school too and met with us. She pleaded that her son needed help, and that if I had him arrested, he would never change. My parents kept urging me to press charges, but the look in his mom's eyes was so sad that I told her I wouldn't if he got some help. And once again, everything was fine for about a week. Halloween night rolls around, and due to my job on campus, I can't go out partying. My job consists of sitting at a desk, checking ID cards between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. to make sure everyone who enters actually lives in that building. Well, I was informed that joining me and my co-worker would happen to be 2 troopers. They told me it was because the drunken shenanigans on Halloween tend to get more rowdy than 2 minimum wage student workers can handle. I thought that was pretty badass, and spent the whole night checking the ID cards of kids dressed up in costumes, trashed out of their skulls. About 3 a.m., one officer pulls me aside, says that he has to tell me something. The real reason that they were there that night was that Eduardo was seen in the area. They needed to make sure that I was safe while they found him. Apparently, kids are harder to identify when they're all in costume. The officer told me that they found him on campus around 2 a.m., hiding in the service entrance to my dorm building. He was carrying a knife. This time, I was not so lenient. I pressed charges on him. Among other things, he is now not allowed within 2 miles of the campus, which essentially makes him unable to be in the town the school is located in. It's been about 4 years now, and I still remember every single detail vividly. I honestly hope that he got the help that his mother claimed he needed. I went to the University of Oregon for 1 term, but I will never forget all the crazy stuff that occurred on my floor. It was all guys, mostly sporty jocks who partied and got super drunk. Out of 16 guys, there were 4 of us, me included, who didn't fit this criteria. But we all got to experience the madness nonetheless. We actually all knew each other and talked regularly. Hallmates were nice and conversational, but I never hung out with them. And our RAs only caught us 1 time. Here are some highlights. One Friday night, there was a big party in the room next to mine. I leave at around 8 p.m., and everything is normal. I come back at 1 a.m., and just as we walk into the hall, there's a hallmate passed out on the carpet. Another one is puking on the floor, and a third one peeing on the electric heater and the bathroom floor. My roommate was self-unconscious, drunk in his bed, who frequently had the wits to vomit in the waste bin. This girl from another hall was wearing only her underwear and crawling around. I literally was the only level-headed person there. I was taking a shower when 3 hallmates burst in with packed bong in hand, asked me if I wanted a hit. I tell them no. Well, that I'm taking a shower. It did give a pleasant aroma to the bathroom, however. No idea how the RAs didn't notice it. There was an unused room that hallmates somehow were able to unlock. This random guy who was friends with someone in our hall slept in it for a few weeks before getting caught. I have no idea why he migrated to our hall. I guess he thought it was more entertaining. Another guy almost had choked on his own vomit and could have died the second week of the term. He woke up on his side with a pile of vomit next to him. Let this be a warning to those of you who drink to always sleep on your side when drunk. About a month before the end of term, there was almost a fight. Drunk hallmates had to prove his manhood, and he tried to get this random guy from another hall into a fist fight. He nearly succeeded. Afterwards, he spent about 20 minutes yelling at the door about the guy who, fortunately, was smart enough to leave before it got physical. This kid basically started crying. It was pathetic and made me lose all my respect for him. It was about that time that I decided to make a certain move out of the following term. My roommate freshman year was a bitch. From the moment we first met, I knew I was doomed. On move-in day, as she berated her doctor father, she had accused the help of stealing her jewelry. "You don't steal, do you?" was her greeting to me. After our families left, she quickly responded to her psychiatrist's email and asked me when I planned on dropping out so that she could use my bed as a couch. She was rude and was always loudly talking on the phone with her boyfriend. I woke up one night, and they were having phone sex. Her side of the room was disgusting, and she told everyone on my floor that I was crazy and jealous of her because I was poor. My first few weeks of college were tough enough, and having to deal with her was wearing me down. I coped the only way that I knew how. I wrote in what I thought to be an anonymous online journal. I had wrote about the phone sex, the entitlement that she had, and how miserable it was all making me. She found my journal, used an out-of-school email address to threaten me bodily harm. I brought it to the resident director. She asked to see what I had written as well. At the end of the day, I was told that I had a problem with depression and anger, and I needed to get mandatory counseling, and to sign a safety contract saying that I would not hurt myself or anybody else. But I was allowed to move into a single room. That bitch ended up going crazy. She held herself into her room and never went to class, dropped out, and had a kid. I graduated, so I guess I win. When I met my freshman year roommate, I tried my best to get to know her and be friends with her. But right off the bat, I knew that this wouldn't be the case. After only a month of living together, we already had completely separate friends. One day, one of her friends confided in me that they had gone through my desk drawers and looked through my personal belongings. It got to the point where I would walk into my room and she wouldn't even look at me. Almost every single day, she would go into our neighbor's room and loudly shriek about things, while in our room, she was completely silent. I finally decided to try and move in with one of my friends, and when I told her about it, she cried. Neither of us liked each other, but she was personally offended that I wanted out of our toxic living situation. Unfortunately, the room swap didn't work out, and we were awkwardly stuck with one another for at least 2 more months.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.